I still am fired up, though, over the IRS whistleblower testimony yesterday and the fact that the media is not covering it. But let's just talk for a minute. You were a CIA agent. You've got deep powers of perception when it comes to analysts and ability, right?
We call ourselves CIA officers, Clay, but go ahead.
I was close. CIA officer, all right. Those two IRS whistleblowers yesterday, one of whom, because they love to play identity politics, was a gay Democrat. So not on the political side of Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. So if they were lying by telling their story publicly under oath, they are putting themselves at peril of being charged with perjury, put in prison, losing their freedom, losing their ability to make money, losing everything that they have in terms of freedom and financial resources in their life. And yet they were willing to go forward, raise their right hands, speak publicly under oath about everything that they said. Joe Biden. Why do people lie? Usually people lie in general, Buck, in my opinion, for two reasons. Because the truth will cost them something, and or in order to try to benefit, right? There's very few times where people lie and they aren't creating a benefit for themselves. Leave aside everything, those two IRS agents, what do they gain? What do they gain by telling a lie versus what do they risk? And then put that on the opposite side and say, what does Joe Biden, what does Hunter Biden, what does the AG Merrick Garland, what do they gain by telling lies? And this is not even remotely difficult. You don't even need to know exactly what they're talking about. You just assess who benefits the most from lying, and all of the evidence would support the IRS agents telling the truth.
This is Charlie Munger, right? Show me the incentive, I'll show you the result. Or in this case, I'll show you the truth. Look at what the incentives are.
And this is what's so frustrating to me, Buck. Ostensibly, the media exists to help make sense of the world. That's partly what we do, I think, every single day. The fact that they are just pretending that this IRS whistleblower testimony, which is not from rabid partisans, it's one of the two guys, like I said, just to play the identity politics game, is a gay Democrat. They don't know.
Well, hold on. There's the don't know.
I'm saying right. The audience, their audience, a lot of them don't know.
Clay, I think you also think that, you think that maybe more of them care. You know what I'm saying? Then like they don't, even knowing that what happened, they don't care, as in it doesn't upset them. They wanted it to be rigged, right? So I mean, it's tough to break down how much of the Democrat base or audience or the CNN watchers, the New York Times, are what I agree that most of them are probably just ignorant of they think the facts are different, yes. But there's also a big contingent. We're just guessing here about the actual numbers. I think 30%, maybe 40% of Democrats know how dirty this was, know how rigged it was, know that the FBI and the IRS and these different institutions have been weaponized, and they like it.
Yeah, I get that. They're biased. I understand that perspective, right? They're just like because this is basically sports, right? My team can do anything.
If my team pays off the ref and we don't get caught, great. That's the attitude of the Democrats.
I've seen this, Buck. This is why coming from sports is perfect, because if your team cheats and gets away with it, most people don't care. I mean, if your star player
right.
is right,
he does something dirty. Everyone's like, that was very clever what he did.
If your star player commits a crime, the number of people who immediately will say it didn't happen. In sports, I mean, it's perfect, right? It's a perfect representation, I think, of let's say 30% of, to be fair, political parties in both directions where you can basically do anything. But my thing is, CNN, and MSNBC and New York Times, the Washington Post, they lecture us all the time about how they are the vanguard of democracy. Democracy dies in darkness, all the news that's fit to print on top of the Washington Post and the New York Times. They are choosing. This is where the deceit really gets me, Buck. I feel somewhat sorry in the same way that I did during COVID when all these people thought they were going to die if they got COVID, and you're like 22 years old, and if you got COVID, you probably wouldn't even know you had it. And they were running around terrified because they bought into what they were being sold, which is a falsehood. They're making a calculated decision, Buck, at the top of the mastheads of all of those institutions to directly disinform and not inform the truth to their audience. And they are simultaneously lecturing all of us about how dangerous disinformation is. It's a deceit that is, once you see it, and this is what I think every day, Buck, I think there are lots of people out there who don't see it. This is the red pill analogy and why I think it makes so much sense. I think the 50% of people out there that don't know the Hunter Biden laptop is real, I think a lot of them are good and honest people. I really do. But they're being led astray by a media that they consume that is being fundamentally dishonest to them.
And, a part of this is they've also been told that the media, like this show, for example, that is telling them the truth about this cannot be trusted on this or anything, so just shut it out. So they're being conditioned. This is very Pavlovian. They're being conditioned to think, I should shut down whatever it is that is coming in and telling me this other stuff, because I've been told so many times by CNN or the New York Times or whatever, you can't trust these other people. I mean, COVID is probably the best and most clear example of this, but there are others as well.
Remember front page New York Times business section. Some people may have forgotten about this. I haven't. Front page New York Times business section, they said the Clay Travis Buck Sexton show was, what were we, the number 4 biggest purveyor of misinformation?
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Number 3 biggest purveyors of disinformation on COVID.
Number 3 biggest purveyors of disinformation. I don't even think it was just COVID. I think it was, they actually just said disinformation in general and didn't even specify, because we asked, can you tell us what, you remember this, Allie? Allie can maybe step in here. We reached out, front page business section, New York Times. We said, hey, will you come on? Because they were citing a study. I don't even remember the group that did the study. We said, we will allow you to come on this program and make the case to this audience about all the lies that we've been spreading. When do you want to come on? The study author. They said, we cannot come on. We went to the New York Times, the author of that story. Said, hey, you just put this on the front page New York Times business section. You can come on our show and you can tell this entire audience everything that we've gotten wrong, and we can talk about it. They wouldn't talk about it either. New York Times and whoever that, I don't even remember the group, whoever they were that did that study that named us the number 3 purveyor of misinformation in all of media. And they wouldn't come on and talk to you, the millions of you that are listening every day. We said, hey, open forum, you come on and tell us what we're doing wrong. And they refused to do it.
We were just behind Bannon on that one. We're coming for you, Bannon, on the misinformation front. We're going to catch up to the misinformation. I mean,
they wouldn't even tell us what the misinformation was. Like,
it's crazy.
Give us the data. Say, come on and explain what we're getting wrong. You can tell this audience. You have that opportunity to tell this audience face to face about what liars we are and what
I just think
falsehoods
the
we're
mindset,
spreading.
though, Clay, is so important. If they're wrong, they don't care because they think they're wrong for the right reasons. And once you see that framework of how they think about things, and it is a very totalitarian mindset, but they don't care that if you, like you and me being right, let's say about masking, for example, which you were very early on that, I was very early on that. It doesn't matter that we were right because we were the wrong people and we couldn't be trusted, and we can't get credit for it now because we have other wrong think ideas. Do you know what I mean? So it never matters. They never stop and say, wow, of all the thousands and thousands of people who were tweeting at me over the course of the pandemic, like, why don't you just mask up and why don't you read the science? And do you know how many have come back and been like, I'm sorry, you were right? None. None.
I know. I always say, you're right when a story vanishes.
I will never say what someone in right-wing media, conservative media, challenged me to a public debate on the efficacy of masking. And as a friend, I texted this person and said, I'm going to do you a favor for your career and say that we shouldn't do this. And later on, that person, like 6 months later, was like, thank you for that. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that
happened.
But
yeah.
I know we nail a story when it vanishes, right? And that's what they're trying to do with COVID now. They're trying to just memory hole all of this BS. They arrested a guy on a paddleboard in the Pacific Ocean. I mean, they're trying to pretend that didn't happen by himself on a paddleboard in the Pacific Ocean. They shut down the ocean from people being able to swim in it. And they're all just going to pretend that they did it. I mean, they filled the skate park with sand. They took rims off basketball courts.
What do you think they'll be willing to do if there are big protests in the streets over the persecution and prosecution of Donald Trump? Don't think that they're beyond any of this stuff. I know this audience knows they're not beyond it, but next year's going to get it's going to get rough.
It's going to be a mess. It's going to be ugly.